summer comes, and what can happen is we have this desire to actually slow down, and we need like a rest and we need a break. I want to urge you that although the summer comes with a more plateau, humming, calmer energy than spring, it is not a time to stop. It's actually a really, really important time to tunnel vision into what you want to do. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 20s Detox. I'm Bianca, your host, where we dive into all the things that I'm learning and unlearning in my 20s to elevate this decade. I just want to say before we get into this episode, thank you so much for all the love on the morning routine episode. It's probably the most viewed and talked about episode that I have released to date. On this side of the internet, we really de-influence a lot of what we've been told, whether modern, like current, or childhood conditioning, beliefs that don't serve us. That's the whole detox. And this is another episode within a series called Seasonal Living, and how there are so many lessons that we can learn from nature. Granted, this is more tailored to people that live in the northern hemisphere, because currently right now, the southern hemisphere is in winter, not summer. The energy of summer can help you through your goals, your actions, your day-to-day life, so that you are a more well-rounded person. And actually, you are not fighting the energies that are outside nature too much. What we'll notice in the wintertime, it is across the board where so many of us set our goals. We think we need to get really fit, grind, and have our perfect morning routines. And it's so against nature because most of what nature is doing outside is hibernating. And it could be the darkest time of the year for some of us in the northern hemisphere. I even think about some of my relatives in Norway. Shout out to Norway. That just won against Brazil. Like, my whole family's freaking out. But it's so dark. Spring, on the other hand, it quite literally springs you into momentum. Everything around you is in full bloom or is about to. Maybe it doesn't last the whole year. Of course, there's some flowers that bloom and shrivel up before even July hits or June hits, but it is definitely a really buzzing time. No pun intended with the bees, but it's very buzzing. Our energy is all over the place, and summer energy is what we're going to be talking about today, and what the energy outside is telling us and what we can be doing as we're hitting the half year mark. So the summer solstice had just passed, and that was the longest day of the year, the start of summer. The reason why that is so important is you now have daylight on your side for so many things in what you want to be doing. We have a lot of things that we want to do, whether it is just personal, fun, career-wise, health-wise, etc. We have this intrinsic, intuitive desire to take action and do a lot of things and learn about a lot of things. And that is a reaction of daylight. That is affecting our circadian rhythms as well, in order to have the energy to continue going without such a tendency to burn out. In the wintertime, if you had been grinding and trying to take action towards your goals, and it is so dark, pitch black by 4 p.m., your circadian rhythm is a bit confused. You might be more prone to illness, sickness, burnout. That's why it's really not a great time. I don't subscribe to the new year, new me, anything in the productive realm when it comes to winter time. In the summer and spring, and as fall continues going, that is a time where we can really dive into those things, you know? So for any of you that follow the fiscal quarters, potentially you're in the business world, the financial world, or you just tend to do that for yourself, we are now in quarter three. Quarter three started on July 1st. What I always like to do, since I block my reflections, my actions on a quarterly basis, I want to reflect on what spring was like for me. Spring for a lot of us was a bit hectic, a bit chaotic. It was really hard to see the point in a lot of our actions. Some of us might have been feeling a little bit burnt out if we had not been living as seasonally as you could. Summer comes, and what can happen is we have this desire to actually slow down, and we need like a rest and we need a break. I want to urge you that although the summer comes with a more plateau, humming, calmer energy than spring, it is not a time to stop. It's actually a really, really important time to tunnel vision into what you want to do. If you have been following the seasonal living, some of you might have already started to work on some of your goals. And that's a really good time to reflect on, like, how has that been going? Staying consistent with the podcast, working out a little bit more gradually, consistently, and listening to my body in that sense. Learning more about health coaching, strengthening my relationship with my boyfriend. Those were like the main goals that I had put for myself around the winter time when I was kind of reflecting on my areas of life and started taking action on it in the spring season. Now, no matter how much you plan, no matter how much you want things to work out in the way that you had written them down in your journal, life tends to get in the way. I have grandparents that are going through a lot of health struggles, and I am needing to shift my priorities around in order to make sure that I can spend time with them and see my family. For me, I had a new client, social media client, so that had made me spend some time acquainting myself with this new client and what we're going to be doing together. And so actually the health coaching, studying and learning about that after I had finished a class in school had totally gone on the back burner. So things happen, right? Like things get in the way. That's why sometimes when summer hits, you kind of want to give up on your goals a little bit, or you want to uproot. You want to change things around. Maybe you want to change what your goals are supposed to be, because it's also this time of the year where we are heavily influenced on social media of what we should be buying, how we should be looking, what we should be doing. Sometimes what can happen is if we're not being mindful and reflecting on what our goals were with that intense intention setting during the winter months, you'll find by the end of the year that you hadn't done a lot that aligned with you and you're confused of what happened. I just want to make you aware that we are so heavily influenced by creators, influencers, people online, and I think that's why some of you might have been drawn to the morning routine episode, because I take a little bit of a different approach on the danger of influencing within the society. We think that it's very innocent when a creator talks about a certain product, because that's how they make money online. But we have to remember that all of that is strategically influencing ourselves to consume more, to maybe do something that isn't even up our values. That was something I had talked to my aunt the other day, because she had said, I had to delete Instagram. I can't do it anymore. I'm hearing more and more people having to delete Instagram, having to delete TikTok. And it's because I think also we are getting flooded with information. It doesn't mean that these people are doing things to make you feel bad about yourself or confused. There's just so much information out there. And when you see on Instagram scrolling with people's opinions, how they're dressing, what they're wearing, what they believe in, subconsciously we are altering maybe what our values are. And so it can be very confusing on where we stand and what we like and what we want to do and how we want to live our lives. So summer is a really good time of taking a pause. In the spring, I said, act now, think later. Spring was a time when nature went full throttle. It does every year. It just goes for it. Sometimes they go too early and the frost hits. Some other times they're more strategic. They last a little bit longer. Nonetheless, nature comes with a bang. It's funny because in Canada, we think we have a little bit more of that buffer season, like the buffer time between winter and spring. And then all of a sudden it's like 25 degrees, 30 degrees Celsius. And we're like, how did this happen when I literally thought winter was like a week ago? But spring really comes bold, loud, fierce. And that is the energy I wanted you to act with, because sometimes you really need to go in without so much strategy when it comes to action taking, because that's the only way that you're going to learn how to tailor it. And that is something that I learned as a health coach in training, where we think that we need to follow these steps that are written in these books and personal developments and these influencers, but you yourself have the tools in order to create the perfect habits, the perfect systems, the perfect routines built around your belief systems and what you really want to do with your life. Sometimes, though, rather than reading about it, it's actually doing it. So by summer, maybe you are going to learn a few things. Okay, the way that I did this for my finances, not working out for me. I tried this budgeting thing and it's not working. I need to alter it. Maybe if you were trying to find love and like find a partner, you were trying dating apps and you're noticing dating apps is just not something that is like aligning with me. No matter how much I've tried, it just doesn't feel right. So maybe that means going to more in-person events, being open with the fact that you're looking for love, and maybe the dating apps are just not it for you. Does it mean that you're never going to find love? No, I just think that that means that you need to tailor it. You need to pivot. And that is the word for summer. Pivot. Pivot, pivot, pivot. For me, I really wanted to learn more about health coaching in general. And I have this book that I have on my shelf that I have not read. And I've been saying for months, I need to read a little bit more about it. I need to read more. Unfortunately, because of so many things that were going on and I had so much on my plate, I had to pivot a little bit. I also was finishing a class and I realized I have so much going on. And I don't want to force myself to read something when I'm too tired, because that is defeating the purpose of why I would want to read it. I want to do it with this excitement. So I had all these plans for it, right? And it didn't work out. So now I'm sitting at summertime, Q3, being like, how do I fit this in my schedule with what I am learning about myself? So some of the things that I've learned about myself a lot is I love audiobooks. And I find myself being more drawn to audiobooks because since I'm reading and writing all day long, it can seem a bit exhausting for me to want to sit down and read a nonfiction book or an educational book at the end of the day. I usually feel drawn to fiction books, like very light reads out of escapism reads, because those are easier for me to do. However, how can I get through it? And that usually is now audiobooks, where I can pop it on when I go for my walk or when I'm making breakfast in the morning or when I'm prepping things for dinner. And that is a way that I can fit it into my life. That is a pivot that I am learning. I don't want you to feel like a failure when you find that you can't do things the way that other people have structured it to be for themselves. They are a different person. They're living a different life. And you also need to remember to give yourself grace that we are so individual. We are so unique. Another example is I've been really wanting to get in the habit of journaling. And no matter how much I try, I can't get to it. And one of the things that I have been doing to myself that I have found is not helpful. I've only set the ultimatum, saying I need to do it in the morning. I need to do it before I get into my work day. And something that I don't know if you've noticed when I spoke about it in the morning routines episode was I find my mornings are a time for play and grounding and joy, but it's not for deep thinking. I think naturally the way that my chronotype is in that sense is I like to do that later in the day, midday, evening, etc. So rather than force myself to journal right in the morning, I'm going to try and just fit it into my day. I'm going to improv. When do I feel drawn to journal? Is it in the evening today? Is it in the midday? Is it in the morning this time? Because sometimes I do feel drawn in the morning. And not setting a limit on when it's supposed to be, because what happens is you never get it done. It's funny because my boyfriend was just telling me that he loves to work out. He's getting really into working out. And because we have such a small gym in our condo building, sometimes the dumbbells are not always free. Sometimes the equipment is not always free. So he's like, I usually base what's available around what I can do. Because if I go there and I'm going to just say I need to use my dumbbells or I just need to do this machine workout and it's not working out because it's not on the schedule, I'm going to find myself time and time again missing more workouts than not because of that. I need to have that improv to me to be able to pivot and figure out what's available so that I can still move my body. And that really does piggyback off of that morning routines episode of focusing more about how it feels, the purpose behind the act, not the way it looks. Another thing that I talk about in the summer, and it's an analogy to think about your garden, to look at the weeds in your schedule, in your actions. If you think of a garden, right? Like wintertime, you're planting the seeds, but they're not blooming by any means. They're hibernating. They're kind of like getting themselves acquainted with that soil. It isn't until spring when they start to bloom. Sometimes they bloom too early, but they bloom fast. If you garden, you know what I mean. Like the first sprouts are very fast, and then summer hits and it starts to plateau, but it reaches a mature vegetable or fruit where it's more resilient to the heat, to drought, to too much rain sometimes. It is a much more resilient plant. What happens also around that time is little weeds start to pop up. If you're not careful, those weeds are going to suck all that nutrients out of those maturing plants. And those maturing plants, in this analogy, in the sense, is the growth of that action. So for me with the podcast, it's like the growth of that podcast. For health coaching, it's the growth of that knowledge. With my boyfriend, it's the growth of my love with my boyfriend. Okay. Sometimes though, there are weeds that come around it that we're noticing is affecting that growth. And what those weeds are telling you is more ways to make it unique to you. That's like one of the major things that I talk about this summer. And I have journal prompts in my guide. So if you don't know, here's a little like promo for this episode. I have an entire workbook. It's a 4-part workbook for seasonal living, exactly what I'm talking about in these episodes, but you are able to use it to work on your goals for yourself. You'll also have monthly newsletters that will go out alongside the weekly newsletter that I have for free, but that is more tailored to seasonal living and guidance on what you could be doing for the month ahead. Somebody asked recently, is this all year round? It is. So what I do is I start with Q1 within the winter, what that means in the winter and what you could be focusing on for those next 3 months. I have a Q1 start reflection, an end of quarter reflection, and that way you're able to stay accountable, keep yourself accountable with seasonal living and working towards these goals. In the wintertime, it's to connect with your intuition and your intentions in a way that is not always connected to a sense of productivity. It is connected to what you're meant to do with your life. In the spring season, it's meant to get back in the habit of consistency and momentum, what it feels to work towards something, and what it means to stay resilient when things don't always go your way. Because by summer, this is the time when you are able to tailor it to yourself and learn more about how you function, how you work. And actually, all these labels that we learn about whether or not somebody is type A or type B or productive or unproductive or cut out for this or cut out for that, you'll learn that it's because it's too simplified. And we're so unique and we really can do anything we want to do. We just need to know how to make it work for us. So if that interests you, I have an entire guide. It's a great way to support this entire channel. Another last thing is about summer. It's really about doubling down on what is already working and letting go, really letting go of maybe what's not working. Because there's only so much that we can really do in a year. Tony Robbins has this amazing quote that I come back to time and time again is, we overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in a decade. What that means is we put so much on our plate in a year. It's almost like we want to reinvent ourselves entirely 180, turn into a new person, and have all these intense neural synapses and associations create that identity within a year. And that's just not physically possible within our psyche, within our time, in a way that is sustainable and that sticks. And the reason why I know that as well is because health coaching is that. It's about lifelong sustainable habits and change so that you are creating almost a new identity for yourself that is better for you. That does not just happen in a year. That happens in a decade. And so sometimes in the summertime, you'll learn, maybe I actually need to take a step away from this. In fact, what you may notice is some of these goals might be the weeds because it's just not the time for you to do that. And if you try and keep watering these weeds, that is not really doing much for you right now at this time of your life. It's sucking the energy out of what is already doing really well. I could be thinking, oh, I need to do so many things with this health coaching school. I need to study this, and I need to read this, and I need to do this class and this class and this class. That might be too much and turn into weeds and suck out the energy of all the intention and progress that is going into the podcast right now. That is doing well. That is showing me at this time in my life, it's what I need to make as a high priority. Doesn't mean that I disregard the health coaching. No, I'm going to focus it in a way that works with my energy levels, with what's happening in my life. But it's a really interesting way of thinking about it. I think sometimes when you just have analogies of what's happening in nature, because we are nature, everything starts to make sense. And you also stop taking things so damn personally. Like, you're not going to beat yourself up about not doing everything that you said you wanted to do with your health coaching certificate, because you know that you can only do so much before you burn out. I encourage you to not compare yourself to other people that have other things working out for them. What I've noticed is the reason why I'm able to stay consistent on a weekly basis with the podcast is because I've been doing this for 4 years, and I know the system that it takes, and I know what I need to do to make that process easier for me. But in the beginning, I definitely was not like that. And you'll even notice if you scroll back, I had major breaks in between seasons because I didn't grasp that system that worked for me. So I might love you and leave you with a lot of what I've said here. I'll just do a little bit of a recap. So we are now in quarter 3. We are in the summer season. I encourage you to just reflect on what spring meant for you, what you were working on, what went well, what you struggled with, because that is going to give you some insight on how to pivot for this next season, this next quarter. Summer is about pivoting. It's not about lessening. It's not about always relaxing all the time, because so much about nature is on your side. Sun is out so much more. Nature around you has this not intense buzzing, flailing energy in the way that spring does. No, they're mature now. So it's this grounding, intense grounding energy to keep you going when you're taking your actions. Pairing with that sunlight, helping your circadian rhythm, you're going to be able to do a lot more. Brainstorm more, think more, work on things more. And so I want you to just think about that as well. What the summer energy is telling you. It's different from every state, every province, every country, every continent. So take a look at what's going around you. How can you use that to your advantage in the next 3 months in the summer season? Don't just think about what is trending online with the summer, what people are trying to influence you to do. Think about in here, what you've been working on. How can you double down on what's doing well, and what can you do to weed out what might be draining the energy and the progress? I know that that's a little bit abstract. Once again, if you get the guide, it will make things a little bit more simple and easily digestible for you, and also allow you to just really tailor it to your life. I appreciate you so much for being here. Make sure to send this over to a friend if it really aligns with you. A lot of you have been enjoying these seasonal episodes. Let me know what you think about them as well. Like if you need a bit more tips. Thank you again for all the love on that last episode. I'm just trying to answer all of you if you haven't noticed with the time that I have. But thank you. I appreciate you for being here. And I'll see you next week. Bye.